In the heart of Wall Street's golden age, one man rose from nothing. A farm boy with no connections, no privilege, just a mind that saw patterns where others saw chaos. His name was Jesse Livermore. Born in 1877, he rose from humble beginnings to become one of the most famous stocks. They called him the Boy Plunger, the Great Bear of Wall Street. He made and lost entire fortunes before most traders even learned the rules. Livermore wasn't just trading stocks. He was trading emotions, fear, greed, hope, the forces that still move the markets today. His story isn't only about wealth, it's about human nature under pressure, a legend built on brilliance and broken by the weight of his own success. This is the life of Jesse Livermore, the man who mastered the market and paid the ultimate price for it. His life was a roller coaster of fortune, risk, and lessons that every trader can learn from. Before Jesse Livermore became one of the most feared traders in history, before he made and lost fortunes big enough to shake Wall Street, he was just a quiet farm boy, trapped in a life he didn't want. Jesse was born in 1877 in a small, struggling farming town in Shrewsbury, Massachusetts. Life was simple and brutally hard. Days started before sunrise, ended after dark, and the work never seemed to make the family any richer. Jesse wasn't built for the farm. He wasn't lazy. He was observant. He watched everything. He counted everything. While his father demanded strength, Jesse showed brilliance. And in a world of rough hands and hard labor, brilliance was a weakness. His father didn't want a dreamer. He wanted a worker, someone who would plow fields, shovel dirt, and obey without question. But Jesse's mind was somewhere else, always searching, always calculating. At just 12 years old, Jesse found something that fascinated him more than anything on the farm: numbers. He filled an old notebook with figures, patterns, and small observations no one else cared about. His mother noticed his gift, but his father saw it as a threat, a distraction. And one cold evening, when Jesse told his father he didn't want to farm forever, his father answered with silence first, and then anger. So the boy made a choice. At 14, with only $5 and that same notebook, Jesse left the farm forever. No goodbyes, no plan, no guarantee. Just a burning belief that somewhere out there, his mind would be worth something. He took a train to Boston and walked the streets until he found a job at a bucket shop, a place where people bet on stock prices the way others bet on horse races. His job was simple: write prices on a chalkboard as runners shouted them from the ticker tape. But while others saw random movements, Jesse saw order. He began memorizing how prices reacted after big moves, how they behaved before they reversed, how the market whispered its intentions through numbers. Every night, he copied these observations into his notebook. He wasn't studying stocks. He was studying human behavior: panic, greed, patience, fear. Most boys his age were in school. Jesse was preparing to challenge grown men in one of the toughest environments in America. And at 15 years old, he walked into a bucket shop and placed his first trade. It wasn't luck. It wasn't gambling. It was mathematics, his own system, built from nothing. The trade won, then the next one won, and the one after that. Consistently, predictably, shockingly. Soon the shop managers whispered his name. Then they complained. Then they banned him. The Boy Plunger, the newspapers called him, the kid who could predict the markets. But Jesse wasn't satisfied. Boston was too small. The bucket shops were too easy. If he truly wanted to test his ability, if he wanted to become the greatest speculator alive, he had to face the only place worthy of the challenge: Wall Street. By the time Jesse Livermore turned 20, he had already outgrown the bucket shops of Boston. No shop wanted his business. No bookie wanted his bets. He wasn't a gambler anymore. He was a threat. So with a few $100s, a suitcase, and the same notebook he had carried since childhood, Jesse boarded a train to New York City, the beating heart of global finance. In 1900, Wall Street was a world unlike anything Jesse had seen before. Towering buildings, men in suits rushing in every direction, voices yelling, tickers ringing, newspapers flying. This wasn't a game of chalkboards anymore. It was survival. Real money, real fear, real consequences. And Jesse? He was the unknown kid standing quietly in the corner, ready to conquer the place that ruined stronger men than him. Jesse walked into his first New York brokerage with confidence. He placed trades using the same strategy that made him a legend back in Boston. And immediately, he lost. Wall Street moved differently. Faster, sharper, less predictable. It was as if the market knew what he was thinking and moved against him on purpose. Jesse later admitted, this was the moment he realized something powerful. Wall Street was a different beast. I had to evolve, or be eaten. Instead of quitting, Jesse did what he always did. He studied. He spent hours alone, staring at the ticker tape, watching every uptick, downtick, reversal, hesitation. He wasn't watching price, he was watching behavior. For months, he took almost no trades. He let the market talk, and he listened. And slowly, Jesse began to understand the rhythm again, the same rhythm he felt as a boy with a chalkboard. Then one morning, Jesse noticed something strange. A series of stocks were rising, but not naturally. The tape felt forced, manipulated, artificial. Jesse didn't have insider news. He didn't need it. He trusted the tape. He shorted the stock, heavily. Hours later, the entire market dropped, violently. Jesse made back every dollar he had lost, and more. Traders in the room turned their heads. Who was this young man? How did he see it coming? Jesse started trading bolder, larger positions, bigger risks, but they weren't random risks. They were calculated. He waited for what he called pivot points, moments where price revealed its true intention. And in 1901, Jesse made the trade that would change his life forever. The Northern Pacific Railroad stock began acting erratically. Giant players were secretly battling for control of the company. The price movements were wild, but the tape told Jesse exactly what was happening. He bet big, bigger than he ever had. And when the market exploded into panic, Livermore was positioned perfectly. By the end of the day, Jesse Livermore, the farm boy who ran away with $5, had made his first $1 million in 1901 money. Adjusted today, that's over $35 million. He was only 23 years old. But Jesse wasn't finished. Making $1 million was only the beginning. Soon, the entire financial world would learn that Jesse Livermore didn't just predict trends, he predicted disasters. And one of the greatest crashes in American history, the Panic of 1907, was about to make him a legend. By 1907, Jesse Livermore was more than a trader. He was a rising force, a man who read the market like a book no one else could see. But even Jesse didn't know that the country was about to fall into a storm so violent it would nearly collapse the American financial system. Early that year, Jesse noticed something unusual in the tape. Stocks weren't rising smoothly. They were rising in short bursts, followed by sudden drops. It was a sign of a market under stress, a sign of fear. Banks were loaning money recklessly. Companies were over-leveraged, and the public was overly optimistic, always a dangerous thing, Jesse believed. He told a friend, "This market is weak. One shock, and it will fall apart." And the shock came. In October 1907, a major New York trust company collapsed after a failed attempt to corner the copper market. Panic spread instantly. Depositors lined up outside banks. Investors started selling everything they owned. The market crashed hard. While the entire street panicked, Jesse remained calm. He had already positioned himself short. And as prices fell, his profits exploded. In just a few days, Jesse made $3 million, the equivalent of over $100 million today. But instead of celebrating, he received an unexpected message. Jesse was summoned to the private office of the most powerful man in American finance, J.P. Morgan. When Jesse arrived, the room was filled with the giants of Wall Street, bank presidents, railroad tycoons, market leaders. These were men who controlled the American economy, men who had never needed help from anyone. But today, they were desperate. Morgan spoke bluntly. "Mr. Livermore, we need you to stop shorting the market." Jesse didn't answer at first, so Morgan continued. "If you continue, the panic will spread. Banks will fail. Companies will collapse. We need the selling to stop." For the first time, Jesse understood the scale of the crisis. Jesse agreed, not because he had to, but because he believed the country needed stability more than he needed profit. He closed his shorts. And then, he did something even bolder. He went long. While everyone else was frozen in fear, Jesse bought. His confidence restored hope. The selling slowed. The market stabilized. Wall Street had been saved, partly by a single trader. Jesse walked out of that office not just richer, but respected. Even J.P. Morgan himself later said, "The market needed a man who understood it." That man was Jesse Livermore. But the victory came with a price. Jesse had earned fame and enemies, and in the years ahead, he would face battles far greater than any market crash. His greatest rise and his greatest fall were still coming. After the panic of 1907, Jesse Livermore wasn't just respected, he was feared. He had predicted a crash, saved markets, and walked away richer than ever. But the next chapter of his life would be something entirely different. A decade of unstoppable money, intoxicating confidence, and a storm building quietly in the shadows. In the 1920s, America was booming. Cars, factories, radios, new cities. People believed nothing could go wrong. And Wall Street, it became a casino of greed. Everyone, doctors, teachers, barbers, waiters, poured money into stocks. Stocks only went one direction, up. Investors called it a new era. Jesse called it something else, a trap. After a difficult period in his personal life, failed trades, depression, and marriage troubles, Jesse came back to the market with a vengeance. He rebuilt his fortune from scratch, using the same philosophy that made him famous. Markets are never wrong. Opinions often are. He studied the tape every day, and something began to bother him. Beneath the excitement, beneath the rising prices, the market behaved strangely. Stocks were climbing too fast. Companies were overvalued. Margin debt, people borrowing money to buy stocks, was exploding. To the world, it looked like prosperity. To Jesse, it looked like a bubble filled with dynamite. He later wrote, When a market acts wrong, it is wrong. Jesse spent months quietly studying the tape. He noticed distribution, big players selling slowly while the public kept buying. He watched volume spikes. He tracked unnatural price reactions, and every signal whispered the same warning. A catastrophe was coming. While the country celebrated, Jesse prepared. In early 1929, Jesse began quietly building massive short positions, not small bets, historic bets. He borrowed heavily, sold stocks he didn't own, planned for a collapse no one believed was possible. Friends told him he was mad. Newspapers preached endless prosperity. Politicians said the market would never crash again. Jesse ignored them all. Then it happened. On October 24th, 1929, Black Thursday, the market cracked. Prices plunged. Fear spread like wildfire. Jesse watched calmly as chaos erupted. By Black Monday and Black Tuesday, the collapse became unstoppable. The market wasn't just correcting, it was dying. While millions of Americans lost everything, Jesse Livermore made the greatest profit in trading history. His short positions paid out in an avalanche of money. He made over $100 million in 1929. Today, that's over $1.7 billion. He became the richest trader alive, a legend, a myth, a man Wall Street could no longer ignore. But enormous success brings enormous enemies. Newspapers blamed him for the crash. Politicians accused him of destroying the economy. Jealous traders said he broke the market. Jesse didn't defend himself. He simply said, "I only followed the market. I didn't cause it." Jesse Livermore had reached the peak of financial power. He had predicted 2 massive crashes, made fortunes, and proven himself the greatest tape reader of all time. But the higher he climbed, the harder he would fall. The final chapter of his story, the tragedy, was about to begin. By 1930, Jesse Livermore had reached a level most traders can only dream of. He had conquered Wall Street twice, predicted 2 historic crashes, and built a fortune worth over $1 billion in today's money. But sometimes, a man's greatest enemy isn't the market, it's himself. After the 1929 crash, the US entered the darkest economic period in its history. Millions lost their jobs, banks collapsed, families starved. And although Jesse had made a massive profit, he suddenly found himself in a world where wealth didn't guarantee happiness. The public hated him. Newspapers called him the man who shorted America. Politicians accused him of helping trigger the Great Depression. He became isolated, misunderstood, and deeply lonely. Behind the wealth, Jesse's personal life was falling apart. His marriages were unstable. His sons struggled. He drank more, slept less, and worried constantly. His mind, once sharp, clear, and unstoppable, became clouded with anxiety. He later wrote, "Trading is a tough game, but the toughest battles are inside the mind." During the early 1930s, Jesse started trading again, but something was different. His legendary instinct was fading. The tape no longer felt like a rhythm. The patterns he trusted for decades stopped working. He forced trades. He chased losses. He ignored his own rules. Trade by trade, month by month, Jesse Livermore, the man who once made $100 million, lost everything. By 1934, Jesse was bankrupt, not down bad, not lost a lot, but completely wiped out. The same newspapers that once praised him now mocked him. But perhaps the cruelest part wasn't the money he lost, but the confidence, his greatest belief that he could always read the market, shattered. Jesse spent his last years writing, trying to understand the patterns of his own life, the way he once understood the market. He wrote openly about depression, fear, and the emotional cost of trading. In his personal manuscript, he said, "If I could give traders one lesson, it is never your broker, never the market, never the news. It is always and only yourself." But the world wasn't listening anymore. On November 28, 1940, Jesse Livermore walked into the Sherry Netherland Hotel in Manhattan. He carried a small notebook, the same tool he had used his entire life. He sat alone at the bar for hours, silent, lost in thought. Later that evening, he wrote a final message in his notebook, not about markets, but about his internal pain. That night, Jesse Livermore ended his own life. But Jesse Livermore's story didn't end there. Today, he is remembered as one of the greatest traders who ever lived, a pioneer of price action, a master of market psychology, a man who showed that trading is not just numbers, but emotions, discipline, and the human mind. His book, Reminiscences of a Stock Operator, is still studied a century later, and his lessons echo through generations of traders. The market is never wrong. Your rules matter more than your feelings. A trader must survive himself before he can survive the market. Jesse Livermore's life was not a story of wealth or loss. It was a story of brilliance, struggle, discipline, and the price of greatness. He rose higher than any trader before him and fell harder than anyone expected. But through his rise and fall, one truth remains. Every trader fights two battles, the one on the charts and the one in the mind, and the second is always harder. Jesse Livermore's story isn't just about money, it's about human nature, discipline, and the price of ego. Lessons we could learn from his story. Lesson 1. Patience makes the big money. Livermore learned something most traders never do. It wasn't his intelligence that made him wealthy. It was his patience. He once said, "It was never my thinking that made the big money, it was my sitting." The market doesn't reward activity. It rewards waiting and acting only when the moment is right. Most traders today don't lose because they lack strategy. They lose because they can't sit still. Lesson 2, being right, means nothing without discipline. Livermore was often right about the market, and yet he still went broke more than once. Why? Because discipline matters more than prediction. Livermore understood this when he said, "The market is never wrong, opinions often are." When traders argue with price, price always wins. Lesson 3, overconfidence destroys more accounts than losses. Some of Livermore's biggest mistakes came after his greatest victories. Success made him careless. Confidence turned into overconfidence. The market is patient, and it waits for traders to relax their rules. Most blown accounts don't happen after losing streaks. They happen after winning ones. Lesson 4. The market punishes ego. Livermore believed the market was bigger than any individual. That's why he said, "There is nothing new on Wall Street. Different era, different charts, same emotions." Ego has ended more trading careers than bad analysis ever could. Lesson 5. The big money is made in the big swing. Livermore didn't make his fortune from small, constant trades. He made it by catching big moves and holding them. As he put it, the big money is made in the big swing. Traders are quick to cut winners short, but slow to accept losses. The market rewards those who can do the opposite. Lesson 6. The market is the real teacher. No book made Jesse Livermore successful. Failure did. Experience did. That's why he said, "The game taught me the game." Every loss was tuition. Every mistake was a lesson.
The game taught me the game, and it didn't spare the rod while teaching. After spending many years in Wall Street and after making and losing millions of dollars, I want to tell you this. It never was my thinking that made the big money for me. It always was my sitting. There is a time to go long, a time to go short, and a time to go fishing.